The countdown continues. 87 days until the 2025 NFL Draft. Mel Kiper and I break down the top 5 things that you need to know about April's draft. That is coming up. Plus, we are responding to your questions, your takes, and your draft dreams live as First Draft starts right now. Kiper Jr. and hello and welcome in. I am Field Yates. This is First Draft. I am going to be joined in just about a moment by Mel Kiper Jr., the man who basically created this entire industry. For those unfamiliar with First Draft or watching us on TV, hello. Thank you for joining us. We are on twice a week. We are a podcast. We are a show on YouTube, on the NFL, on ESPN YouTube channel, and of course today with you live on TV. We have so much to get to. Mel Kiper Jr. not just invented this industry, but invented the show as well. So, Mel, we are giving people an introduction. This is Draft 101 for the 2025 class, a crash course, if you will. Call it a draft course instead. But first of all, Mel, how are you, my friend?
I love being back in the draft labs field. It's been a while. So back in the laboratory to tell everybody about what you need to know leading up to late April. We're going to try to, over the course of the next several months, bring a lot of new names every week, new names you haven't heard a lot about, but also play the hits. And there's some guys out there that certainly deserve to be talked about even more so. And we'll debate some of these guys as to whether we're too high, too low. Our opinions are going to be different in very field. So can't wait to get it started, pal.
And Mel, is this crash course or this draft course gets started? Of course, it's no surprise that the very top of our lesson for today is a quarterback conversation. As every single year, it is going to be the position that dominates the headlines. Shedeur, Cam Shedeur. We are, of course, talking about Shedeur Sanders from Colorado and Cam Ward from Miami. Both of these players atop each of our quarterback lists, Mel. So let's start here. What do people who have not followed college football closely need to know about the game of Shedeur Sanders?
Shedeur is, as he said, I'm just going to win games. I changed everything at Jackson State, changed everything at Colorado. You think about accuracy throwing the football and also being precise throwing the football. That's Shedeur. Think about pocket presence, pocket awareness, toughness, looking right straight, keeping your focus when there's guys coming in your face, taking incredible hits and still being able to come back for more, not pointing fingers, blaming anybody over the course of 2 years at Colorado. Shedeur Sanders isn't going to win any races, okay? He isn't going to have the strongest arm out there, but as a quarterback, and I said this about Brady when he went at the end of the 6th round, and Giovanni Carmazzi from Hofstra went in the 3rd round that same year. Why did Giovanni Carmazzi go in the 3rd round? Why are we still talking about Giovanni Carmazzi now? Because he had the athletic ability. He had the arm strength. He had the wow factor from a physical athletic standpoint. Tom Brady did not. Tom Brady was 5'2", terrible vertical, right? Didn't look, the LTPer he wasn't outside of the height. Bottom line, didn't have the strongest arm, but who ended up being the greatest of all time. So I think we got to always look at physical athletic qualifications with who is the best quarterback, field general, signal caller. And for me, and I've been consistent with this, and I may be proven wrong. We could be proven wrong on everything. Like people, I could be proven wrong. Yeah, we could be proven wrong on every daggone thing we say. Yep. But for Shedeur Sanders, he's my QB1 because he is all the things old school about playing that position.
And Mel, here's one area where you and I do see a sizable difference is that you have Shedeur number 1, Cam Ward number 2. I've got them flipped, but I do believe it's close. You have Shedeur and Cam Ward inside your top 5 overall prospects. I'm a little bit lower on each of those players. Probably the biggest concern, if there is one, for Shedeur Sanders, who has so much to bring to the table that you very cleanly and succinctly outlined, is 42 sacks taken this past year. Now, it's a bad offensive line at Colorado. Typically, though, young quarterbacks that go high in the draft don't go play behind offensive lines that are very good. I think he needs to be a more urgent reactor in the pocket, does Shedeur Sanders. We are seeing more and more players impact the game with their legs at that quarterback position, right? Just look at what we're going to see in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes had 2 rushing touchdowns on Championship Sunday. Jalen Hurts, amongst the best rushing quarterbacks that we have seen maybe ever. Shedeur not going to really impact the game with his legs. That being said, very accurate passer, 74% completion percentage this past year. If he has time and space, he is a beautiful thrower of the football. Cam Ward, the other name people are going to debate about until we get to April 24th, Mel. And heck, you and I might debate these players all the way until that time. 1 year at Miami, what's the skinny on Cam Ward?
Cam Ward, 3 different schools, Incarnate Word, Washington State, a couple years, and then this past year at Miami, where he elevated that program. And it's certainly Cam Ward, when you talk about why he's QB1 with a lot of people, it's because of a stronger arm and more mobility athleticism. That's why Cam Ward, for some people, is QB1. I think the problem is when you talk about with Shedeur, and you mentioned it, that tick faster, don't hold the ball, right? Well, that changed in the NFL. In Colorado, you're trying to let things happen and open up late. There's a fine line between allowing going through progressions and allowing things to happen late and holding the ball too long. That's the big second guess is, why did he hold it? Or why didn't he throw it away? Or if he does, throw it away, why? Was there somebody breaking open? Why didn't you see that? The field vision we talk about. Cam Ward can sling it from all arm angles, various arm angles, okay? So he's going to give you that new wave look, that way we're seeing in the NFL now with all these arm angles and ball coming out, going left, going right. Reckless, careless at times, fumbles, cleaned that up. He did more this year, cleaned it up better this year than he had in the past. That's got to continue to improve. Okay, and a mistake at Miami in the ACC in the first quarter, second quarter, and you're coming back in the second half putting up big numbers, went unnoticed. In the NFL, those mistakes are noticed. Okay, we even see teams that don't turn it over still lose games. Normally you don't, but sometimes it can happen. Yeah. We saw a team not punt and still lost the game. The Kansas City Chiefs seem to have that ability to win games regardless of what the other team's doing or not doing. But in the NFL, Cam Ward cleaned that up. The athleticism, mobility, arm strength, all different arm angles. I think he's accurate, precise passing, a little off at times. And that's a pet peeve of mine too, Field. This notion that you got to put the ball like you handed it to the guy.
Yeah.
When you're under duress and you're looking here, you're looking there, you got all these options. Everything's going on, right? And you got to put the ball like I handed it to the receiver. Yeah. Catch the dang-gone ball, okay? The late, great Raymond Barry said, if you get your hands on the football, you should catch it. Okay, we saw yesterday, guys not catching the ball when Josh put it there where it could have been caught, right? We see with Cam Ward, sometimes we talk about quarterbacks, well, you got to be a little more precise. Yeah, you'd love to be able to do that, but reality is you're not always going to be able to. So again, if you put the ball in the vicinity, these guys, they're paid to catch the football. In a lot of cases, they don't unless it's handed to them. So let's put a little bit more of an onus on the receivers than always the quarterback, which it seems like we do way too much of.
We're going to talk more about the teams and the fits and the players going forward over the next few months because we still have 87 days until the draft. But I want to get to a couple of other quarterback 3 options, Mel. And this comes specifically from Ed Flowers, who wants to know over on Twitter, and always tweet us using the hashtag #FirstDraft. Oh, you know what? Let's get to we'll go to that. We'll get to the third quarterback here in a second. Ignore this question that's on the screen here for a moment. Is there a third quarterback that could sneak into the third round, Mel? Because I think you and I feel good about Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward somewhere being locks to make their way into the first round. Is there somebody else who might find his way into that top 32 as well?
I think it's Jackson Dart. I mean, Jackson Dart to me, and I know there's other quarterbacks. You're going to pick yours. That's your guy coming up because I'm not going to steal your thunder, Field. I'll throw, certainly Kyle McCord from Syracuse, formerly of Ohio State, and Will Howard, formerly of Kansas State, went to Ohio State in that mix. But Jackson Dart, we don't say who's our guy. Jackson Dart can throw the football than anybody. Jackson Dart can move around. He's tough. He's a baller. He's not just a quarterback. He's a baller. And I look at the numbers across the board. They're phenomenal. 69% completion percentage this year, 29 touchdowns, 6 picks. Over the last 2 years, 60 touchdowns combined, 11 interceptions. Jackson Dart, you talk about extending plays, picking up first downs, frustrating the defense with his legs. Jackson Dart can do that. So for me, when you put it all together, I know RPOs and the offense he ran for Lane Kiffin. Yeah, that's something that people are going to say, oh, look, that made it easier for him. I saw Patrick Mahomes yesterday in an RPO throwing strikes and doing it in an NFL AFC championship game. So Jackson Dart can do that. He can do anything else you want him to do. He can roll left. He can throw against his body. He can roll right. He can see the field, and he can run, and he can frustrate defenses. So for me, by the time we get to late April, I really believe Jackson Dart from Ole Miss is going to be solidly QB3 and could have a chance. We saw Bo Nix have that late rally. Michael Penix Jr. have that late rally. I've said all along, it's not just me now. I brought up Jackson Dart and staying back early on. Jackson Dart, and forget the Florida meltdown at the end of the game. Jackson Dart solidly, and I'm not wavering on this field.
Yeah.
I'm not wavering at all. I'm locking it in Penn right now.
Ooh.
Jackson Dart's my QB3.
QB3 locked in Penn for Mel Kiper Jr. You did see Jalen Milroe on the screen as well, the Alabama quarterback who I promise you we're going to debate a bunch over the next handful of shows. He is an interesting, a fascinating, perhaps polarizing prospect as well. We are just getting started here on First Draft. We have more to come on First Draft, though. We will be right back. For more draft coverage, First Draft with Greeny, Mel Kiper Jr. and myself is at Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time and Thursdays at noon on the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel. And welcome back into First Draft. He is Mel Kiper Jr. I am Field Yates. And a reminder, Mel, that while we do think those two quarterbacks, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, will go early, we're not certain they're going to go that early, as in number 1 overall, which in part could be because of this outstanding pass rushing and defensive line class. So, Mel, I think that as of right now, there is a debate. If the Titans are going to pick a non-quarterback, do you go with Travis Hunter or do you go with Abdul Carter? We're not going to do that debate for this moment, Mel, but tell us why they might be inclined to take that Penn State standout edge.
Well, closing out games. You talk about the flipping at the first half. You say end of the first half. We get the ball. We got the ball in the last couple of minutes, right? We're going to get the ball to start the second half, and we're going to get the ball at the end of the game. Who's going to close that out and prevent scores, preventing field goals from happening? It's Abdul Carter off the edge. You saw it this year. He, in 1 year, did more than he did in 2 years in terms of sacks and tackles for loss field. So this guy has a motor. He closes like a cat, which is impressive. He's consistent. He played the run as well. You talk about edges and sealing edges. He can do that, and he can just flat out get after the quarterback. He has that knack. He's my second highest rated player, right there with Travis Hunter. Has been all year, just right up there at the top. And to put the numbers and know that he's the guy. And tonight, Dennis Sutton on the other side certainly helped. Penn State had a really good front seven, but this guy was the difference maker all year for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, Mason Graham, you see there on your screen right now, Mal. I think there are 3 true blue, top of the heap prospects at the very beginning of my big board. Mason Graham from Michigan right there. And then, Mel, right back to you. Mykel Williams from Georgia. If you told me he was an NBA small forward, I would believe it.
Yeah, I think the LTP, he looks the part. The production was okay. I want to see more of a repertoire of pass rush moves, take advantage of that tremendous physical and athletic ability in the NFL, put it together and get that 8 to 12 sacks. That's the number we talk about, 8 to 12 sacks. He needs to be there. He has the talent to do it. We thought he could be the number 1 pick in the draft. He won't be, but he still has a chance to go in the top 10 based on potential.
Now, let's just take a break here to kind of assess where this class as a whole of pass rushers sort of stacks up. But I think maybe the question that people are asking at the very top of the board for Abdul Carter, who, again, I think you could nitpick him or Travis Hunter as player 1 overall. Again, a debate we'll have at a different time. But if you're going to take a pass rusher with the very first pick in the draft, people need to know that you're getting the equivalent of like a Bosa brother. Remember, Chase Young famously went extremely high in the draft. What pedigree of player does Abdul Carter fit into? Because last year, we didn't see a pass rusher. Heck, we didn't see a defensive player go off the board until 14th overall. Is Abdul Carter the kind of guy that in different classes would be in the consideration for the very best player?
Yeah, I think he would be right up there, certainly. And I still think the quarterback we have to see by late April. Hey, teams may want to move up. You could move down. We'll see. And Travis Hunter, we talked about, we'll get to him in a minute. But the bottom line is for Carter to be like Micah Parsons and resemble Micah Parsons. You see the number 11. You see what Parsons doing with the Dallas Cowboys. That's what people are going to look at. That's the kind of guy that can impact the game when you need it the most in the NFL. And I've already told you when those areas of that game are. That's Micah Parsons. So, yes, whether it's Travis Hunter, Micah Parsons, those are the 2 best players in the draft. I said it pretty much all year. Those are your 2 best players. Travis has been number 1 since August. Carter's been up there. He's at number 2. So, again, are you going to stretch it a little bit for the quarterback because of positional need and value and say, okay, they're 4 and 5 on my board or down a little bit on your board? Will teams still go up and get him at 1 or feel the need to? I said all along, the Raiders are the critical team. Yeah. The Raiders are not going to sit and wait, I don't think, for the quarterback to fall in their lap. They did last year and it didn't work, okay? I don't think they will this year, so that's going to be the team to watch, but certainly Abdul Carter deserves to be up there as highly ranked as he is, not just because he has a talent, but because he had the production when he was turned loose off the edge this year.
Mel, a quick last note from me on Mason Graham. Before we give you another trio of players that can disrupt the pocket at a high level, is Graham is a true junior, spent 3 years at Michigan. But you know this, last year, on a Michigan team that had a dominant defense with many players drafted, guys all over the board. I thought Mason Graham was the best player in that defense last year. This season, the team struggled. He was fantastic once again this year. I don't think there's a single weakness in his game. No player is perfect, but there's not an area that you can tell me, hey, Mason Graham is deficient in this regard. Maybe his length is a slightly below elite level. This guy is a disruptor. He completely compromises the interior of the pocket. Go ask Ohio State, the team that just steamrolled through 4 playoff games and barely broke a sweat, what it's like to have to block Mason Graham for 60 minutes. They couldn't do it. That's the reason why Ohio State wasn't 15-1 this year, but instead went 14-2. Don't worry so much about the sack production for an interior rusher. What he does to open up opportunities for other players to create sacks cannot be measured. I'm just telling you, it is outstanding. There are plenty of other pass rushers, though, Mel. And let's get to a few more. And we're going to start here with one of the more perplexing players in the class, James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee. What do people need to know about him?
Well, I think about Pierce, the same thing with Michael Williams. We had thought back in August they would be the number 1 or in line to be the number 1 pick overall. Yeah, he had production. Yes, he had that. James Pierce Jr. did. But when you look at where he's going to fit in, how is he going to be in the NFL when you're going up against the best in the world, those offensive tackle spots coming off the edge? That's the debate's going to be, is whether he's in that late first round mix or mid first. I don't think early first round now, Field. I think more late first round area. I would say we said this draft a little underwhelming in the first round. That's because guys like Pierce Jr. didn't pop. They weren't guys that just jumped off the screen at you this year. The talent's there. They did flash. But again, there's going to be some mixed opinion on where he will go by the time we get to late April.
And Mel, here's what I would say about James Pierce is the next 3 months really matter for a guy like this. As you know, I'm not telling people that general managers aren't working on the draft throughout the year. They are. But believe it or not, they got a lot of other stuff they are doing, which includes the season, managing a roster during the season, during the offseason. You might be hiring or firing coaches. You are doing things like, free agency, draft, trades. There's a lot on their plate. The next few months is when the GMs were getting even more focused on the draft, and a player with James Pierce, his natural physical gifts, is going to draw the attention of the top decision makers. It's going to be a bit of beauty in the eye of the beholder for a player with those natural gifts. All right, let's keep moving here with another pass rusher. And you mentioned, the lack of production sometimes from James Pierce and Michael Williams and others. How about leading the FBS in sacks? That's what Mike Green did out of Marshall. 17 sacks this season. And yes, Mel, the competition must be accounted for. But he played against Ohio State, and what did he do? He made Will Howard uncomfortable for a lot of that game until it became non-competitive. Mike Green, 6'3.5", 251 pounds at the weigh-in during the Senior Bowl, Mel. I get it. People are going to say, he got 17 sacks against a bunch of teams that are not nearly dominant. You're not going to see a bunch of offensive tackles on the schedule for Marshall during the season. They're going to end up playing in the NFL. I don't know, Mel. He's big, he's physical, exceptional athletic ability, a great first step. This guy just screams off the edge, and 17 sacks during a breakout season, for me, merits first-round pick.
Yeah, no question. When you have the talent and you have the production, I don't care where you play. And that's the bottom line about Mike Green. It's the same thing for Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College, Field. Same exact thing. Production, consistent from week to week. He popped. He jumped out at you, which is what you need to do.
Sure.
And we talk about bend, and we talk about being able to close and be able to have multiple moves, counter moves, secondary moves. He has that. And his taller offensive tackles have trouble with the ability to get low. We talk Dwight Freeney. Who did Jonathan Ogden struggle the most against during his career, his Hall of Fame career? Dwight Freeney, because Dwight Freeney was in that 6-foot range. That's where you talk about Donovan Ezeraku is going to give those taller offensive tackles a lot of trouble in the National Football League. He did it all year from start to finish. He liked Mike Green. They were the two guys that were popping every week.
Yep.
And there's a reason, because when you're consistent and you're going out there knowing you're the marked man too, which is impressive. Everybody knew from the get-go who you had to contain, and they couldn't. So that's why Mike Green and Donovan Ezeraku deserve an awful lot of credit.
Yeah, production does matter. It certainly suggests there are some great traits involved. All right, coming back in just a moment here on First Draft, we're going to discuss the unicorn. That's right, perhaps the best player in the entire NFL draft class. For a full recap of Mel's Mock 1.0, head on over to the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel by doing this. Scanning the QR code on your screen. We are so 2025. We break down the top 10 picks plus more here on First Draft. And we are back. I am Field Yates. He is Mel Kiper Jr. Thanks for joining us here on First Draft. And Mel, we can talk about whether he's a wide receiver. We can talk about whether he's a cornerback. You just believe that Travis Hunter is the best player in the draft. Tell us why.
Well, first of all, as a wide receiver, he's dynamic. That's the bottom line. His ball skills, his hand-eye coordination, the catches he makes effortlessly are amazing. You see it here. You got him covered? No, you don't. He's catching the football. And that's in the NFL. That ability that he has, that unique ability to do this on a regular basis. These aren't just once-in-a-lifetime plays. These happen all the time. And you don't realize how fast he is because he's silky smooth out there. So this is a kid, and his football IQ, his passion for the game, his love of the game. I mean, for the stamina, the endurance that he had to show. And we talk about where's he going to fit in the NFL. How about a corner as well? If he can be a lockdown corner, fine. What you're going to want to do with him, Field, is find out where he can be great. Yep. Is he going to be great at wide receiver? Is he going to be that difference maker? My boy Xavier Worthy was a difference maker yesterday for the Kansas City Chiefs, right? You're going to not have him playing wide receiver. If he can do what Worthy did, he can do that and more every week. So if he's doing that, it's going to be awfully hard, Field, not to have him exclusively on the offensive side of the ball and sprinkle him in at cornerback. If it turns out where he's not that player, and he can be a lockdown corner, if he can be a Champ Bailey, a Charles Woodson, it's hard not to have him out there to say, take that number one guy. People say, we don't need a number one guy. We got multiple guys. Fine. Whoever the guy is that he's covering, if he can eliminate, neutralize, or contain that guy, that's incredibly valuable. Then you can sprinkle him in at wide receiver. If he's great at both, then you got a dilemma, okay? Then you got to pick your spots and see, okay, where do we need him most in this game? Okay, you can even do that. So we have never had this, Field. We've had guys come in with multiple positions, dual versatility, okay? But it was never where are we going to play him. We knew where we were going to play those guys, okay? They were playing corner. This guy can be great either place, and he can play both ways, and he wants to play both ways, and he did at Colorado. So, yeah, I know he can't do it for a period of years in the NFL, but what you want to find when you play him both ways early on and he's young, and he can still do it, is where will he define himself as great? Yeah. And once he does that, then he's sprinkled in at the other position.
Mel, here's what I would say. A few thoughts here. First of all, this is a fantastic player. He's an incredible kid as well. The football character is off the charts here for Travis Hunter. You don't play both ways unless you care more than everybody else cares on your team. So Travis Hunter is going to bring it every single day, especially on Saturdays and now Sundays. Let's start there. Second of all, I have not heard from anybody that has gone to Colorado that he is planning to just play one position, right? I think the idea is he's open to the continuing to play both ways. Whether he can do that, perhaps, is to be determined. It might be determined by the team that drafts Travis Hunter. So when you're having the debate about Travis Hunter versus Abdul Carter, and you make the case that Abdul Carter is the better player, it could stem from the belief that you think that Travis Hunter is going to eventually play on one side of the ball or other, and you say, hey, just a wide receiver is less valuable than Abdul Carter, the pass rusher. I'll just say this on the wide receiver front, Mel. Not saying he's at this level yet, because this guy might be the best wide receiver in the NFL. He's certainly on the extreme short list. Athletically, his body control, even the way that he got this sort of this Gumby-like nature to him. Take some big hits, get up, and never be bothered. There is some Justin Jefferson build to Travis Hunter. I know that sounds ridiculous when we're comparing these guys to amongst the best players in the position. I'm just saying, the build has some Justin Jefferson to it that is going to make a GM salivate, and which is why there could be a very healthy debate in the draft room. If he's only going to play one spot, which one is he better at? I'm not sure we have a definitive answer. That being said, I think the floor for Travis Hunter is extremely high because this guy is going to be a potential All-Pro at either spot that he debates. As you just think about the history of covering the draft, you've been doing this for 47 years. Is there anybody that going into the draft was even close to this level in terms of versatility, that the conversation prior to his career beginning was anywhere close to what it is right now for Travis Hunter?
No, he is number one on that list. He is the unique talent. And Travis Hunter, you got to love him. He was counting players one time when he was on the side coming out on the field. He's worrying about everything. Yeah. And when you're going through what he has to go through in a game playing, but people don't realize how difficult and unbelievably tough that is.
Sure.
Okay. And his mind is still thinking playing with the game. He's still thinking along the lines of where I am and what we're supposed to do, like a coach would. That's remarkable. And I think when you talk about fear factor players, and I always say you don't have to catch X amount of passes to still make it possible for other guys to do it. Just your presence on the field. I'll go to Baltimore, Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers run that jet action, coming across the formation every play. He's got guys more there. Everybody's getting convinced, and that's helping other players out. So it doesn't matter what you do. Offense, it's going to be hard to keep him off the offensive side of the ball because they're going to sit there and say, he's fear factor. He's opening up the whole field for other guys, other opportunities for other players, okay? Because you saw that. I mean, the things he can do, look at that. I mean, that's just unbelievable, his talent. And the way he catches the football and the way he wants and his passion and love for the game. There's no diva here, boy. This kid, yeah. He and Shedeur, they were guys that stood out. They jumped out at you, but he's a baller. And to me, that's going to be the tough part once you get to the NFL is how much you're going to take him and put him on that defensive side. And I say sprinkle him in and wait for the biggest games or the playoffs to use him a little more on that side. But when you got that entity that everybody's got to be concerned with every time the ball is snapped, okay? And we're trying to score points. This league's all about that. We saw yesterday 55 scored. Look at the Kansas City Buffalo game, right? But when you get down to these games, these offenses are clicking. And it's tough to stop these offenses. And I get about closing out games during the regular season, but in the playoffs, when these quarterbacks are on and these receivers are doing their thing, it's tough to stop. And Travis Hunter on the offensive side is going to be an incredible weapon.
He really is. He's a special player to watch. It's been a joy to watch him. The Heisman Trophy winner this past season. Not far behind him was a running back. And Mel, if you like 2-for-1 deals, you'll like this year's running back class. I'll explain that in just a minute when we return here on First Draft. You're watching First Draft. Tune in to the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel on Mondays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time and Thursdays at noon for full draft coverage. Catch Greeny, Mel, and myself, Field Yates, as we break down the best prospects across the nation. Scan the QR code. That's right, the QR code on your screen now for more information. Hey, welcome back to First Draft. He is Mel Kiper Jr. I am Field Yates. And Mel, I mentioned that there is something of a 2-for-1 special this year in the 2025 draft class. What am I referring to? You've got 2 years worth of running back draftable prospects this year in what could be dubbed the year of the back. But one thing is clear, Mel, there's a guy at the very top who was 101 of running backs. It's Ashton Jeanty from Boise State.
Yeah, whether it's running, catching, blocking, this kid does it all. And you talk about you knew who you had to stop. And people say, well, Penn State can contain them, control them. Yeah, he had over 100 yards. Bottom line is he is we talk about a big play waiting to happen. We saw Saquon do it for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's that ability, that explosive play. Every time he touches the football, Jeanty will give you that potential, that home run hitting potential. So I think for Dallas, it was tough for me to go. I went wide receiver because they could use both. And again, you can find a Tony Pollard type in this draft in that 4th round area. I really believe you can do that. So that may push him down just a bit. On the board right now, on my big board field, Ashton Jeanty, and I'm looking at I'm update this on a regular basis. He's at 9. Yeah. So if the Dallas Cowboys took him where they're picking, or Denver Broncos and Sean Payton, you remember, pair him with Bo Nix? Are you kidding me? But there are a lot of other backs. We said that magic number is 35 draftable backs. You're going to see undrafted free agents are going to come into the league next year. They're going to make teams. Yeah. So again, will you take an Ashton Jeanty when you could have another player where there's a big drop-off at that spot, but we can get a really good running back in that 2nd to 4th round area? How's that going to impact the thought process, particularly the Dallas Cowboys and then the Denver Broncos? That's going to be really fun to watch, to see who, feels the need to take that. People say, oh, Kiper, you hate running back. I love running backs. I just don't love them in the 1st round. I understand their value. Go to the teams that played. 4 teams. How many were drafted? Had a running back drafted by their team? 0. That's pretty much the case all the time, right? Saquon was drafted by the Giants. So at the end of the day, love Jeanty. He deserves to be a 1st round pick. But again, this is one of the deepest positions in the draft this year is running back.
It sure is, Mel. And I understand this about scouting. It is far from a one-game job, right? You don't watch one game of a guy and say, I got it all figured out, right? Some guys can have Superman days. Some guys can have the opposite of that on a given day. But I will say this. I believe that Ashton Jeanty's tape against Oregon early this season will prove to be amongst the most instructive of any single game from a player in the entire draft process. Why do I say that? That's the best team the Boise State played, at least during the regular season. Obviously, they made the playoffs and lost in that 12-team playoff for the first time in college football history. But against Oregon, a team that's going to have probably 3 defensive linemen drafted, 2 linebackers drafted, multiple defensive backs drafted, Ashton Jeanty sailed over 200 yards, multiple touchdowns, and the way that he ran with power and contact balance and explosion and vision was so remarkable against that competition that eased any of the concerns about whether he was just doing it against the bad teams that he was playing against in the Mountain West week in and week out. On top of what happened this year for Ashton Jeanty, in which he nearly won the Heisman Trophy, Mel, he was a relative non-factor in the passing game after having over 565 receiving yards in 2023. This is a 3-down back. This is not the kind of guy that if it's 3rd and 6, you're pulling him off the field. So there's so much versatility that Jeanty brings to the table, even in a very deep draft class. Let's give some names that might be in that RB2 conversation, Mel. We'll go back and forth here. You start with a player out of North Carolina.
Amarion Hampton. I'll tell you what, people say, well, he had Drake May, and that Drake May is a great quarterback, and Drake May could throw the best of them, and that opened up opportunities for Amarion Hampton. Well, how about this past year when Max Johnson got hurt right away, right to start the season? Quarterback was an issue. Amarion Hampton was the guy, and his numbers were exactly the same as they were with Drake May. You talk about ability to bounce and then go. He can do that. One cut and go. And he is a guy, when you talk about contact, he will take you on, and he will break tackles, and he runs with passion, and he runs with purpose, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He will block your last line of defense for your quarterback. He will be able to keep that quarterback like Barkley did for Hurts upright. This kid is a complete football player. Mac Brown can't say enough great things about him. He could have left this program. Drake May could have left. They didn't. Loyal to the Tar Heels. Amarion Hampton, I don't think there's anybody else that can be running, but we talk about QB3, RB2 has to be Hampton. I don't know. Maybe you have a different opinion, Field. I don't know how anybody else could put any other running back behind Ashton Jeanty but Amarion Hampton.
Okay, so here's what I'll say, Mel. And this I'm actually glad you said it that way, because I know this is not something that people love, because they want players ranked 1 to 256 when they get drafted, which, by the way, the order kind of suggests how those players are ranked. But the reality is every team has different needs. Every team has a different style of play. Every team has a different offensive system. And so I do think there is a player who could come into that RB2 conversation for a team that loves to prioritize the zone running scheme. Inside, outside zone, guys who just put their foot in the ground, hit the hole, and make their money going upfield. That's Caleb Johnson from Iowa, who had a breakout season this past year. Another true junior who declared early and had just a monster year. How about this? 23 total touchdowns, over 1,500 rushing yards this past season. I was talking about how Ashton Jeanty was not utilized nearly as much as a receiver this year as he was last year. We saw the opposite for Caleb Johnson, who, if you're watching right now, you're going to see one of the best single plays of the entire college football season, where he takes a little swing pass for 73 yards to the house against Nebraska, breaks off the tackle breaking, shows off the speed as well. If you're looking for a guy who's got good patience, but also good decisiveness, that is where I think Caleb Johnson could enter the conversation. You think about some of these teams that love to run the zone schemes. Pretty much anybody from the Sean McVay tree, that's what they are looking for. That might be the kind of team that will be drawn to somebody like Caleb Johnson. But there are so many more, Mel, and we could pick 20 running backs to discuss right now. But is there one more that you want to just shine a little bit of a light on? It's kind of a unique pass catcher.
Yeah, LaQuint Allen, to me, Field. You look at what he did at Syracuse. We talk about Kyle McCord, great year at quarterback, right? Oronde Gadsden second, great year catching the football. H-back tight end does it all, can move him outside. LaQuint Allen, after game 3-4, was nothing but a touchdown maker. You watch him here. He put him outside as a wide receiver. He's making catches. He's doing damage after the catch. You see him inside between the tackles, okay? First, tackle breaking ability, and he smells the end zone, okay? Short yardage, goal line. He was spectacular. Catching the ball, catching touchdown passes as well. Spectacular. The end zone he owned, okay? I mean, LaQuint Allen was really impressive. And you put on the tape of him, love the way he runs. Does he have that Alvin Kamara, long speed? No. But he is kind of that Kamara-like player. And by the way, Alvin Kamara was a third-round pick, not a first-round pick when he came out of the collegiate ranks at Tennessee. So when you look at a guy like LaQuint Allen, probably third, fourth round, that's what I talk about. You got to weigh that when you're talking about a running back in the first, as opposed to getting LaQuint Allen in the third or fourth round. Aaron Jones went in the 5th round, right? So you're going to find that Aaron Jones type of player, Tony Pollard, 4th round in this draft. LaQuint Allen will be one of those guys.
It's such a fascinating conversation, Mel. And Ashton Jeanty, again, first of all, there are teams that are hesitant to draft a running back early for all the reasons that you have talked about for decades now. There are also teams that are saying to themselves, yeah, I could draft Ashton Jeanty early, or I could wait until the 4th or 5th round, as you see some of the top-ranked running backs on my big board. Worth noting, these are from prior rankings. Nick Singleton is back at Penn State. He is not coming out in this year's draft. But Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, one of 2 Ohio State running backs who could be top 100 picks, along with Travion Henderson. We haven't even touched guys who might go in the 5th or 6th round, who I am convinced, Michigan's got 2 draftable running backs, and Kalel Mullings and also Donovan Edwards. There are just guys left and right, Mel, from schools that we have seen proven production who are going to end up being ballers in the NFL, but because of the depth of the position. Go ahead, Mel.
Talk about burst.
Yeah.
Dylan Sampson at Tennessee and versatility to catch the ball.
Yep.
Dylan Sampson, give it and go. R.J. Harvey at Central Florida, UCF. Yep. We're going to get in the coming weeks. Our underrated guys. Yep. There's a lot of those guys under the radar, underrated. They're going to get them at a point in the draft where they're going to be the bargain pick, great value. And I think at running back, you're going to find that pretty much more so than any other position in this draft.
Yeah, pretty much all the running backs are going to be a little bit overlooked other than Ashton Jeanty, just given the depth of this overall class. We are not done yet, people. We still have some homework to hand out. And coming up next, here on First Draft, we dive into a couple of notable injuries that are going to impact where players end up. For a full recap of Mel's Mock 1.0, head on over to the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel by scanning the QR code on your screen. We break down the top 10 picks and more on First Draft. All right, we are back here on First Draft. He's Mel Kiper Jr. I am Field Yates. And Mel, it's January. One of the hardest parts of being a draft analyst, and not a doctor, which I'm still not a doctor, people, is deciding where to place players that are coming off of major injuries. Guys who, if they weren't hurt, might be top 10 picks in the draft. So let's get through a couple of names here, Mel, and talk about Josh Simmons from Ohio State, the left tackle. Here's the background. Season-ending patella injury back in October. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, told Adam Schefter he expects him to be ready and fully cleared for the start of training camp. Tell me about where he might have ranked if he weren't hurt and how this injury impacts where you think he might go.
I'll tell you what, Field, he would have been up there maybe in the top 5, top 6 of this draft. Everybody's talking about Will Campbell, where he'll go in this draft coming out of LSU. We'll have to see about that arm length there. Josh Simmons would have been rivaling a guy like Campbell and Kelvin Banks Jr. and the others to be offensive tackle 1. Josh Simmons was playing at a high level. He had cleaned up the penalties. He was keeping everybody away from Will Howard. He was opening up the running game. He's still at 14 on my big board. Yeah. In the mock draft, I had him going to Houston a little later because of the medical. If you're going to say, okay, the 49ers, that's when we did our rotating mock field. If you're the 49ers, you want an heir apparent to Trent Williams, who can compete at right tackle, can play guard right away. And you have to wait a little bit for him, and he will be the heir apparent to Trent. Josh Simmons is your guy. You talk about Travis Hunter being unique to a draft. This is unique to the NFL draft to have 3 guys that are all first-round caliber players get hurt and be lost for a lot of the season. Josh Simmons got hurt against Oregon in that first game, or he would have been, and I'm not overstating it, he could have been the best left tackle in this draft. That's Josh Simmons. He also can play right tackle, played that before. Josh Simmons was playing at a super high level, and he had done the one thing I always say, he improved. He improved. He got better and better, and he was ready to have a phenomenal year. Unfortunately, like I said, he had that injury against Oregon.
Yeah, and we'll see again on the patella tendon. Every team is going to evaluate it a bit differently, Mel. So there might be some teams that are saying, I don't care, I'm taking him top 10, because if we're just stacking ability, he's a top 10 player in this class. There are other teams that might say a 320-plus pounder coming off of a patella tendon injury. Who's to say that next year might not be a redshirt season for him? Every team is going to see it a bit differently. Another major injury, Mel, and this one I know hits near and dear to your heart as a big Notre Dame guy, was Benjamin Morrison, who his true freshman season, 6 interceptions, looked like one of the best players in the country. What do you make of him following a hip injury?
Yeah, he's 23rd on the big board, and you got a lot of teams in that late first round. You don't think the Buffalo Bills can use a corner, the Minnesota Vikings or Baltimore Ravens? There's a lot of teams looking at cornerback that are saying, okay, would this player have been there had it not been for that unfortunate injury? Probably not. Benjamin Morrison right now, I think by the time we get to late April, will be solidly in that first round. We'll have to wait and see for sure, but it was amazing what Marcus Freeman did without Morrison, okay? Without Riley Mills, who was playing at a high level at defensive tackle, he could have been in that second, third round discussion. He got hurt against Indiana. Just to have them in the national championship game, where, by the way, they made it respectable because they had some things happen for Ohio State, made that game respectable at the end of the day. Morrison not playing. Had he played, he is that lockdown corner. He is an elite corner. So, yes, he's still on my big board, top 25 big board. Now, how long you have to wait. Medical is going to be important for that. But with all those teams picking in the late first to say, okay, normally this guy wouldn't even be close to us.
Right.
Remember when Kyle Hamilton fell to the Ravens? So John Harbaugh had said when he showed up to the facility, why are you here? These are the guys like, why are we getting projected these guys? Whoa, they got hurt. And teams may be concerned about that. So for Benjamin Morris, Shavon Revel Jr. from East Carolina is the other one field who got hurt early on after looking great with a couple pick sixes and a pick six and a couple interceptions. With his length and his physicality, Shavon Revel Jr. from East Carolina field, I have him on my big board as well. So he's at 22. So again, I think he's in the first round next. I had mocked him to the Baltimore Ravens. This is a kid, unfortunately, hurt, freak injury, not in a game, but in practice. He got hurt. And that prevented him from being way, way up there. And he's one of those guys like Morrison and like Josh Simmons are going to present an opportunity to teams to see a guy who had the ability to go a lot higher slide down only because of a season-ending injury.
Yeah, Mel, I'm going to leave it there because, again, there's just not a whole lot more that you or I can add medically to this conversation. We see it impact players every single year. These three guys amongst the most notable injuries that we'll be tracking during the Combine medical rechecks. We're going to end the show here, Mel, with something that we do often here on First Draft. It's called Orange Crushers. For those that don't know, Mel loves himself a great orange crush during the summertime especially, but really all times of the year because they are delightful. And the idea here is to highlight a player who perhaps is being a bit undervalued right now for those that aren't necessarily in the weeds every single week or every single day on the draft, Mel. So give us a player who deserves more national love than he is currently getting.
Well, I love guys who are underrated, undervalued, overlooked. And Carson Schwessinger from UCLA.
There we go.
When you started the season, people weren't even really checking him out. He had been special teams. He was a backup, came out of Oaks Christian. Nobody really wanted him coming out of high school. Super smart, okay? A kid who's fast, athletic. He's not, 6'2", 250, 6'2", 225, probably 225, 230 range, but fast to the football. Regards a little bit of a Matt Milano type in that area. Yep. He had a couple picks against Iowa. He led the nation in solo tackles with 90. He had 136 for UCLA. Like I said, a couple interceptions, a tackles for loss, got after the quarterback. He is fast to the ball carrier, to the football, and he can cover. And he's a bioengineering major, incredibly smart. This guy, I love former walk-ons who are a one-year guy. He paid. I always say to kids when I see them on campus, 3 words should be you always have these little sayings on their T-shirts, right?
Yeah.
3 words should be on your T-shirt. Everybody in college, pay your dues.
Love it.
Pay your dues, right? We all had to. He's going, I'm guaranteed. No, you aren't guaranteed a thing. Carson Schwessinger earned it. At UCLA, he paid his dues, okay? Special teams, doing all that work. Gets his chance. I'm watching games early in the year. I'm thinking, 17 tackles, 15 tackles, Carson Schwessinger. Yeah. And guess what? People are going to have to catch up to him. They're going to have to catch up and realize this was the year because back in August, nobody was talking about this kid. Yeah. He wasn't even a starter. Only started 10 games in his career, right? Wasn't even a starter when the season began, okay? So this is a guy, you talk about early day 3, maybe even day 2. Carson Schwessinger from UCLA is a name that everybody has to become more familiar with. And if you can go to some tape of UCLA games and watch them, have fun watching this kid get to the football.
Yeah, let's go to a player who probably is better known because he's been around Ohio State for a long time. But Lathan Ransom deserves more recognition. Here's the reason why I say this, Mel. This Ohio State roster was laced with top-end talent. The 2 best prospects aren't even eligible to come out in the draft. Those are Caleb Downs, the terrific safety, and also Jeremiah Smith, the incredible true freshman wide receiver. Lathan Ransom, 5-year player, started a ton of football games. He's got experience on special teams. He's got experience covering. I thought he made his mark, though, with his physicality during the playoff run. This guy was all over the field. He's fearless. He's going to impose his will. On top of that, Mel, he's clutch. He just seemed to make big plays and be in the right place at the right time. You keep referencing Championship Sunday with very good reason. What's the one thing that differentiates the Chiefs? Or one of the things, I should say, that differentiates the Chiefs. They play their best when the money is on the table. When it matters most, the Chiefs execute better than other teams did. Lathan Ransom played his best when Ohio State needed him to be at his best. I don't think he does any trait you're going to say to yourself, wow, that guy is the top-rated safety in the class because of his size or his speed or his production. Everything he does, though, he does at a pretty darn good level. I have a ton of respect for Lathan Ransom. Wouldn't surprise me if he sticks around in the NFL for a long time as just a rock-solid safety. Maybe he's a third safety for a while. I think he's going to play in the NFL for a darn long time. He deserves more attention. All right, so that is going to do it for today's edition of First Draft. Again, if you're sitting here watching us on TV for the first time, we're going to be around a bunch every Monday, all the way through the 2025 NFL Draft, 87 days away. Be sure to check us out on the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel. We are out there twice a week. You will get every single episode uploaded into your feed. Mel, you're a legend, my friend. I'll talk to you again later on this week. I'll see you then, my friend.
Safe travels. Always a friend. Always a pleasure, my friend. And like I said, have fun in Mobile, and we'll all be watching. And I think things are going to start changing, guys, because coaches are getting involved in this process beginning today.
It's a beautiful time of the year. We'll see you down this week in the Senior Bowl in Mobile.